Okay, this is GamerBlave, and we're back with True Remembrance. After a pretty long hiatus, admittedly, if you've been following along with this series as I've been putting it out. And if you've just joined, then welcome. But if you missed the last video, then and you haven't experienced this before, then I strongly encourage you to go back and catch it, because there's pretty much no way that I'm going to be able to fill you in at this point. But, you know, just as quickly as I can, I'm going to give you a little bit about what happened in the last one, and then give you a little bit about what I've been thinking about with regards to that. Okay? So Blackiris found himself in Law's hands, in Law's arms, and that had happened. He had kind of collapsed into Law's arms at the end of the previous episode. So the reason for that, you can go to the episode even before that. So we're getting even further back, but and he suggested that he could be Law's patient. So, you know, the suggestion there, the thought there is that Law is potentially helping them, or Law is potentially helping him somehow, or even, I guess, my most extreme, far off the deep end theory is that everything that we've seen so far is because as we understand the mnemonicide protocol, is once the mnemonicide protocol is enacted, the recipient of the mnemonicide protocol has a story kind of what happened when they were in this town. So my most far off the deep end story or theory is potentially Law is the mnemonicide and he's the patient, or he's the guest, and what he was getting there was some glimpse, you know, some waking moment almost of her doing the mnemonicide protocol, and he was digging the glass into his hands kind of to try to remember, to try to get back anyway. But that's I really don't think that's what it is, but that's kind of my far off the deep end one. But anyway, what happened when he finally did slip into unconsciousness there is we went back and we met a girl, and we met a girl, and that girl didn't really have a name, but that girl was hanging out at Blackiris's old apartment with him. And without getting into too much detail, you'll really have to go back and check that episode out. But he thought that girl was connected to Annalie. She didn't really talk very much, or pretty much at all. And then Annalie actually showed up and confirmed that connection. And but we never did find out that girl's name. But I am wondering if that girl could potentially be the Maria that we did hear about back in a number of episodes ago. And I think it might have been the hospital episode that had a strong connection with Blackiris that we don't really have fleshed out. We don't exactly know what it is, but it was something very important that he hasn't really talked about yet. So we don't really know a whole lot about that stuff yet. So I guess that stuff remains to be seen. But anyway, Annalie and her just departed the apartment, and that's really where we left off. So, I think that was more or less a flashback or something that happened in Law's arms, which I'm a little fuzzy on that too. I mean, as I said earlier, that other stuff was kind of a theory as to whether Law came back from her running off with Dexter. Like, did she come back, or because Blackiris had been in kind of a funk, he had been kind of experiencing some very weird stuff. So was that actually her? Had she actually come back, or was he still experiencing some weird stuff? I don't know. I mean, was he conscious, or was that a memory, or I mean, I really have no idea. This is getting really weird here. So let us proceed and just find out what's going on here. Our nameless girl started dropping by to see me pretty regularly after that. She'd always come by in the evening. It was probably too risky for her to be wandering about in the daytime. Oh, hang on one second. I had actually... As a side note, my saves kind of got deleted. I won't go into why, but I had to skip ahead to this point, so I had turned on instant text to get to this point. Anyway, I digress. It was probably too risky for her to be wandering about in the daytime. No wonder. If I were her, I'd want to avoid being pursued by those black-suited goons as well. The pattern was always the same. She'd immediately go to the books upon arrival. After a few hours of reading, she'd stand up and go back home. I'd always offer to walk her back, but she'd never accept. It wasn't that she was ever a bother, far from it. But still, wasn't it a bit suspicious for a girl to come visit a man's room, always late at night? So I kind of wanted to say something to her, but I never had the heart to bring it up. Besides, I didn't want to give her the impression that she wasn't welcome here. She came last night, as punctual as the clockwork that was missing in town. As usual, she picked out a book. As usual, she started reading it with gusto. Except this time around, she fell into a sleep so deep that I simply declined to wake her up. Which was why, in the morning, her eyes fluttered open, and she jumped out of bed in shock. "I'm so sorry," she said with a worried look on her face. She'd started talking to me as of late. Short sentences and single words, but that was still progress. I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised, but she spoke just like Annalie. Hopefully, she wouldn't start imitating his personality as well. "Oops, stole your bed." "Oh, don't worry about it. Did you sleep well?" "Yeah. Much nicer than the bed at church." "I see." "Annalie, you cheapskate. Couldn't you at least buy her a better bed?" I looked out the window. The sun was just starting to peek in from the horizon. It would be dawn soon. "Well, want some breakfast before you go?" "Don't want to be a bother." Well, I suppose I should have been relieved. Her personality was completely the opposite of Annalie's. Although this too was a problem, because she went too far in the other direction. But see, I've already made breakfast for 2. It'll be even more bothered if you don't eat up. She nodded happily. So after an early breakfast, we went back to reading our books. But by the time lunch came around, she'd started wandering around my apartment in boredom. I had lots of books, so this came as a total shock. She read them all cover to cover. So she pulled a random book off the shelf and started reading it over. The problem was, it was one she'd read not too long ago. Obviously, she still remembered most of it. Nothing interesting about that. I watched her for a short time, then I asked, "Want to go buy some new books?" She had a completely thunderstruck expression on her face at first. Obviously, she hadn't grasped what I just said. But soon enough, that gave way to a great deal of happiness and a great deal of confusion. Her way of saying that she really wanted to go, but it was too dangerous, I suppose. "Oh, don't worry about it. If they're around, all we have to do is lose them. It's elementary," I said with a smile, but she was still rooted in place. So I took her hand and pulled her up to her feet. She didn't offer any resistance. Because if I didn't do this, she'd never venture outside again. She followed me out the door with a newly resolute expression in her eyes and a new boldness in her step. And so we stepped into town, filled with rain and tears. The rain that fell upon this city was cold and clear. And when it came for winter, the rain turned to snow. I only had one umbrella in my apartment, so we walked together, slowly. I surveyed the area, no suspicious people or black suits in the area. We walked along the road to 6th Street. I didn't want to draw any untoward attention, and taking the trolley would have done just that. My companion looked all around with her breathtaking interest. Everything was new to her. That wasn't so unusual. She'd probably only ever seen our city under the cover of night. According to Annalie, the first time she'd ever stepped outside was when she'd come to me for the first time. And she'd been chased the entire way, so I didn't really think that counted. Every few seconds, I had to call out to her to keep her from stepping in a puddle or crashing into a wall. And she'd always look up at me with this bashful smile on her face. We walked to 6th Street in relative silence and entered the bookstore. She looked about in wonder at all the books that were lining the shelves. I was afraid she'd get lost for hours inside this place, but she quickly chose a book for herself and came back. I had the cashier ring up the purchase, and I handed the book to my companion, who hugged it to her chest with a look of such bliss that I almost felt guilty. "Thank you," she whispered with a smile. It was the same expression of warmth and relief that she put on whenever she saw Annalie. We wandered around the storefront after that, and I became aware of the presence of a black suit in the crowd. So I grabbed my companion's hand and ducked into a nearby store. She was taken completely by surprise, but she followed me regardless. We hid there for a while. We could see the black suit circulating through the area, so our tensions were high. It was the same guy from before, but it didn't look like he'd noticed us. It was more that he was tracing the trail that my companion had taken to get to me in the first place. I watched him systematically stop by every store along the way and talk to the shopkeeper. He was probably inquiring about my companion here, and he was coming this way, which meant he'd be at this store soon. So, I mean, we have to understand that she has to be probably pretty valuable. Annalie referred to her as his experiment in the last video, or in the last episode. And, you know, I'm not sure if he means that in a literal sense, as if, you know, he was experimenting on her, or if, you know, something of that nature, or, if she is an escaped experiment. I mean, that seems kind of like a reasonable explanation, maybe. But it seems like this has been going on for a while now. She's been escaped for a while and living in the church. And there are still these people that are after a pretty long time, have been searching this particular area. Because if they came and they questioned Blackiris, they actually knocked on his door and were looking for her in this area that long ago, and still have resources dedicated to searching in this area, then she's definitely very high priority. So there definitely is that. That's that definitely kind of reiterates that point. I took a deep breath, took my companion's hand, and walked out of the place. I opened up my umbrella, held the girl close to me, and walked right past the black suit. We walked in silence like that for a time. I turned to look and saw that the black suit had disappeared. So he hadn't discovered us, thank God for that. Just then, she started struggling a little. She was probably uncomfortable in my grasp. "Oh, sorry about that." I let go. She stepped back and silently averted her eyes. She was blushing furiously, too. I hadn't intended to hold her so tightly, but that was what ended up happening, obviously. And for the entire trip back to 5th Street, she refused to so much as look at me once. I mean, blushing, I'm just looking at the picture here. I mean, she doesn't look very happy, and if he was gripping her too hard, I mean, I guess he could have hurt her. I don't understand how that would be interpreted as, you know, a good thing. So, she might be upset about that, I guess. But sometimes when people's emotions get high, or when their focus gets off of things, they definitely don't know what kind of force they're using. They definitely don't know what kind of force they're using on that kind of thing. This is kind of anecdotal. So you can go ahead and skip ahead like 30 seconds if you don't want to hear a random story. But I used to be involved in some various stage productions, and I won't go into the details on all that right now. But I was acting opposite this one guy who was supposed to be essentially beating me up. But you know, if you're on stage, you're not supposed to be getting actually beat up. But I would have various cast members, so there would be multiple casts, and some of the cast members who were playing this other character who was supposed to be doing this to me were able to get the idea that they weren't supposed to actually be doing this to me. But no matter how many times we would repeat to this one guy, he just wouldn't get the idea. And I mean, he would just be so rough. He would just be so rough with you. So, I mean, And I mean, it was understandable, I guess. I mean, he was very new to it. He was a lot younger than everyone else. I mean, he was quite good and talented. He was the nicest guy in the world. But, I mean, some people, it's just, when their adrenaline gets going and when their focus is on something else, they just get carried away. And it's on something else. And, that's just what it is. So it's understandable. And, if it happens once, I wouldn't take it personally. And don't misinterpret what I'm saying to mean I'm justifying violence against women. Because, I mean, like, he was grabbing her by the hand, by the arm to protect her. He wasn't, like, hitting her. Like, if he hit her, and he's like, oh, I meant to hit you less hard. That's not what I mean in this case. Okay. Hitting her is not okay. That's not what I mean. But I'm getting completely off topic here. Now I'm getting off topic, but I didn't want what I was just saying to be construed incorrectly. Okay. So I guess I kind of opened up a can of, I potentially opened up a can of worms there. But anyway, I digress, and we'll get back to it. Okay, she refused to so much as look at me once. We were nearing my apartment complex when she suddenly burst out laughing. Okay, maybe she wasn't upset. Wow, scary. Couldn't breathe. Glad that's over. She said with a sigh of relief. That's understandable. Don't you get scared too? Sometimes, Blackiris? She asked, her eyes open wide. And I realized this was the first time she'd ever called me by my name. Sure I do. There's not much I'm not scared of. She kept on laughing gently. Obviously, she thought I was joking. She started reading the book the moment we got into my apartment. Well, to be more accurate, she made a good effort, but she was asleep within minutes. Probably tired out from all that walking. But man, did she sleep a lot. Annalie came by that evening. He brought some pasta and vegetables in a bag with him. Obviously wanted me to make dinner for him. Oh, man. Annalie. What a guy. I think in the last video, he showed up and demanded, was it tea or coffee? Like 2 cups of it before we would even talk to him. It was just like, give me stuff. And this is even worse. It's like, go ahead and cook for me. Man. It's like, take care of this person for me and then go ahead and cook for me. So it's like, why don't you actually, the least you could do is bring him dinner in this case. I guess he's bringing the resources. So at least he's not expected to pay. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting off topic here. She wasn't at the church, so I thought she might be here. He said as he came in beside and stroked the sleeping girl's cheek. I got out of my chair, took Annalie's bag, and went into the kitchen. Annalie got into my chair and stayed put. You move it, you lose it. I started washing the vegetables for a salad when Annalie started talking to me. She started talking a lot, hasn't she? Sure. Not a lot, though. Just a few words here and there. She's never uttered a word. Not in all the time I've known her. But she wants to talk to you, that's why. I turned to stare at him when he said this. His eyes met mine, narrowed, gleaming with vicious light, and awfully amused. Obviously, he'd been waiting for this. So I turned back to the salad. Make him wait a little bit longer. It's the truth. Not a single word to me wasn't necessary. But now she talks, and is interested in all sorts of things. I plated the salad and pasta and carried everything to the table. As I approached the bed, in order to wake our sleeping beauty, Annalie casually remarked, "I wonder. If you like her, you can keep her. If you promise to treat her well." Well, the slave trade is alive and well here in the world of True Remembrance. Are you serious? But his face was its usual harmless old man mask, impossible to tell whether he was joking or not. I glared daggers at him. Maybe I was starting to get mad, maybe I wasn't. I didn't really know, but I had to say something. Unlike you, I don't keep people as pets. If you really want to treat her well, I don't. I don't love her. Really? Then why are you running your fingers through her hair like that? And why that loving look in your eyes? I don't love her at all, he repeated softly. Except to me, he sounded as if he were trying to convince himself of it more than anyone else. I had no idea what was going on in that mind of his. Frankly, I have no idea what's going on here at all. It seems really interesting, the whole going back to this scene here. You know, we've got, presumably this is, I mean, Blackiris is going back to this memory, and he is thinking of all this, like this is happening, so to speak. This flashback is happening. His head in Law's lap. So somehow this is to inform, I mean, presumably, I'm guessing here, I don't know. Somehow this scene is going to inform maybe, or give us some kind of clue or something about maybe why Blackiris experienced the very weird, messed up scenario that led to him more or less stumbling into his house. Okay, I'm going to just shut up right now so we can continue here. But man, this is so messed up. I don't even know what's going on. This is just crazy. Neither the girl nor Annalie came by my apartment anymore after that. And as for myself, I became so busy with my own work that I didn't really think much about them. But there came a point when I found myself between assignments, and I began to wonder about what happened to the unlikely pair. I'd been planning on heading out of town anyhow, so I decided to drop by the church. Maybe I'd find the girl there. I was, after all, starting to get pretty worried about how she was doing. It was an unusually sunny day. Shards of stray light flickered and faded in the puddles that dotted the streets. The stained glass windows of the church came into view, almost alive in the day star's shining exultation. I opened the door and went inside. It was pleasantly cool within. The air was quiet and still. I remembered that the girl lived in the basement, except it was too dark for me to really see much, which meant I had no idea where the stairs down were supposed to be. But then I realized someone was here with me, over there where the bunches were. I found her. There she was, sitting on the floor, motionlessly. That's interesting. I know motionless, I've always heard it as motionless, motionlessly. I mean, I suppose it's a word. I don't... If I didn't know better, I would have thought that she was praying or something like that. She looked toward me when she heard my footsteps, and her eyes went round in surprise when she saw who I was. "Did you come to see me?" she said, her eyes glittering with excitement. Now that wasn't altogether unpleasant, but man, this was making me want to blush. Pretty much. "I was wondering what had happened to you, as I haven't seen you around for a while." The girl's face went blank for a moment, but then she managed a small and troubled smile. "Got a little busy. Couldn't leave this place." There was something awfully suspicious about what she just said, but for now I was relieved. She was alive and well. Oh, thank goodness. I was worried. Thought something might have happened. Anyway, I'll leave you be. "You're leaving already?" "Yeah, I got a bunch of things to do today, so..." And I felt sorry for her, but I did have to go. If I didn't get this stuff done, it would never be. She looked up at me, down at the ground, and up at me again. Then, diffidently, she asked, "May I come with?" "Come with? You do realize that I'm heading out of town, right?" "Yeah," she replied sadly. This was the first time she'd ever asked anything of me, so naturally, I was taken by surprise. "But you can't go out, can you? You don't have a pneumonicide protocol permit, so they wouldn't let you back in." "There's a tunnel underground. Pops used it when he used to slip out of town. Use the same route to come see me." "No problem if we take that." There was a strange expression in her eyes now. I'd never seen it before. Then I realized what it was. She was desperate. "Please. I really don't want to be here. Nothing but bad memories." Very well then. I finally gave in. "Okay, then you go ahead and use the tunnel. Wait for me on the other end. I'll meet you there." "Okay. Sorry about this." "Don't worry about it. Besides, I'd feel better if you came with me anyhow," I replied with a smile. She just stared at me. Obviously, she had no idea what I was talking about. Her eyes glittered in the dark. And the weird thing was, I was starting to feel better about today already. I took the trolley to First Street, walked to the gate, and showed my ID and my leave authorization to the guard on duty. He looked through all my documentation, nodded, and motioned for the gate to be opened. Not even a pneumonicide could come and go as he pleased. Not in this city. I'd gotten my leave authorized over at HQ just yesterday, for instance. I walked out of a small side gate. The walls of the city stood behind me. There was nothing for miles around. No matter where you looked, it was all grassy, hills and forests, not a single soul to be seen. It had been a long time since I'd last left the city. Maybe about a year ago, maybe longer. Well, first things first, time to go get my young companion. She'd shown me where the entrance to the tunnel was on my map, so it was simple enough to find. And sure enough, there she was, poking her head out from a small hole in the ground. She came out entirely when she saw me and ran up the hill to where I was. "We're going to be walking to the closest town from here. Will you be okay?" "Yes," she replied with a nod, and a deep breath of fresh autumn air. And so we started walking. For every hill we climbed, yet another one appeared. My companion seemed to be fascinated by every plant, every tree, every bush, every flower she encountered. She went running every single time something new appeared on the horizon. She was going to be fast asleep when we got home, for sure. We arrived in town in due course, and I flagged down a taxi. When I gave the driver my destination, he said, "Oh yes, that's a lovely part of town, isn't it?" He wasn't wrong, by the way. That was my opinion of it too. Shortly thereafter, the taxi dropped us off at our destination. I headed toward a house at the end of the street with the girl close behind me. The house had a small garden, the lawn was green and well kept, and the flower bed was beautiful. But the most beautiful thing of all was standing there with a hose watering her garden. I stopped the instant I saw her. My companion looked up at me quizzically. A gentle breeze swept through the area and carried with it the fragments of Maria's song. Well, I guess that settles the "this girl is not Maria" theory that I had. I was wrong. This brought back so many memories. For instance, the last time I'd heard her sing this song, she told me about her dreams. To live in a little house, raising lots of flowers. That was all she would say. Such a little dream, yes, but not one that could ever come true in the city where we were born. This song, beautiful, isn't it? My companion murmured. Yeah, I replied with a smile and turned away. At the same time, I heard someone from inside the house calling Maria's name, to which she replied with a bright and cheerful voice. "Let's go." But she stayed there, looking back at Maria and her garden for a long time. Why didn't he go talk to her? Now, okay, I mean, my guess then at this point would be Maria had to have been an old guest that he felt a very strong attachment to and then enacted the Mnemonicide protocol on. So Maria doesn't remember him at all, but he has very strong feelings about Maria or something to that effect. That'd be my guess. So he's essentially dead to Maria, but Maria is alive and happier now. We got off the taxi and started heading back toward our city. Except my companion had changed quite a bit. Instead of running around and exploring her surroundings, now she was refusing to leave my side. I could still hear Maria's song ringing in my ears. It was such a bright and happy voice, one I'd never heard when we were together. I hadn't seen her in a year. Did people really change that fast? I guess they did. I mean, 5 years ago, I'd left the city where I'd been born in order to become a mnemonicide at all costs. I wanted to make Maria's dream house and flowers and all come true. That was the only reason I'd ever had. The only one I'd ever needed. So, wait a second. So, he became a mnemonicide for Maria. Is that what was just said? That was the only reason he'd ever had. The only reason he ever needed. So he became a mnemonicide for Maria. And, now Maria doesn't know him. That's pretty intense right there. That's pretty intense. Wow. Gee whiz. Gee whiz. She must have had it pretty bad. But I wonder why she couldn't get it, she couldn't get the treatment from someone else. I mean, maybe she couldn't afford it? So did he get his pneumonicide training and then, kind of sneak out and give her the treatment under the table or something? And maybe that's what happened. I'm wondering. That's curious. That's very curious. And so I lost touch with her for 2 years. Couldn't be avoided. Only those with pneumonicidal potential were allowed within the confines of the academy, and no one was allowed out until graduation or washout. The academy was an incredibly peaceful place. I never would have believed it. It was filled with friendly classmates and professors who showed much interest in you as a person. But I had no use for any of that. I turned it all away. It was unfair of me to accept the kindness of others while Maria was left behind to struggle in the dark. Besides, more importantly, I had no idea what to do with the goodwill of others. It was a scary thing. So scary that I probably ended up hurting a lot of people. I didn't hear that Maria had undergone the pneumonicide protocol until it was too late. Whoa! Okay, he didn't do it. She got it from someone else. I mean, even if she got it from him, she wouldn't remember him. So I don't see what his issue is. I just lived out my days as a student within these cloistered walls without a care in the world. She never stopped crying ever since the day you left. You had to be removed from her memory, otherwise she herself would have died. That was all Dexter would say to me when I asked him why he'd done it. That's crazy. Who knows if that's true? Dexter does not seem to be the nicest guy now. But of course, that doesn't necessarily mean he was lying. There's no confirmation of that. But who knows? I turned only to see that my companion was now walking a little behind me. There were tears running down her cheeks and dripping to the ground. Don't mind me. I'll be fine. It's not me. See, I just have no control over this. These were the exact same words that Annalie was fond of using. Except, there was one difference. Unlike Annalie, this girl didn't stop crying. But I was jealous of her. Because she was doing exactly what I found myself unable to do when I lost Maria. Instead, I just sat down in a back alley and watched the rain come down on me. Completely useless. You're the one who's really hurting. So it's unfair that I'm the one who's crying, right? She tried to smile and desperately dabbed at her eyes, but that didn't stop the tears. In fact, it just made her look more forlorn than she already was. Maybe. See, it's true. It hurts when you break up, or you're blamed, or you're hated. But none of that hurts as much as being forgotten. I finished with a smile. How strange. I'd never thought I'd be able to talk about Maria with a smile on my face. Because every single time I thought about her, things got difficult, so difficult that I'd completely forgot how to smile. So I took my companion's hand. She was crying so hard that she couldn't see ahead of her. Let her cry enough for both of us. I began to lead her through the hills back to our city. Yes, let her cry enough for the both of us. The past was the past. It was never going to come back. My companion didn't seem to want to stay in the church once we got back, so I brought her back to my place. It was dark out. The clouds hung threateningly low overhead. So we had dinner together, and then started reading together as per usual. It started raining right around then. We could hear the raindrops drumming on the roof. My companion listened attentively for a few seconds, and then she asked, "That song. It was so beautiful. What's it called?" "I don't know either." "I see," she replied with obvious disappointment. Well, not that I didn't know how she felt. "I want to sing it too, but I've forgotten the words," she said with a wry smile. "I'm sorry. I've forgotten as well. So why not just scat it, with laws and such?" "Law? Why law?" "Huh? Well, see, it's pretty, clean, and it works well with singing." She blinked slowly. And then, softly, she started humming the melody as she remembered it. Her voice was soft and gentle. The drumming of the rain threatened to drown it out, and yet I heard every last strain. Her voice lost its uncertainty after a while. It grew stronger and warmer as I listened. I could feel it embracing me, sinking into every pore, filling me up inside. And as long as I was like this, I felt as if I could forget all the pain and sorrow that I'd carried with me. The dark city where I was born. The factories where people toiled and died. The dead-end streets and unmarked graves. Maria. Everything was vanishing from within me. Vanishing? I bolted up from my chair. She stopped singing that instant and looked up at me with surprise. "You." My worst fears had come true. She had no idea what had just happened. So she just stared back at me innocently. And that filled me with burning pain. "I'm going out. I'll be right back," I said as I ran to the door. I was too impatient to even take my umbrella. I just sprinted out into the rain. I took the trolley to First Street, to HQ, but Annalie was nowhere to be found. So I came back to Fifth and ran to the church. I was totally soaked by the time I saw the stained glass windows in the distance. I ran up the hill and burst into the church. Sure enough, there Annalie was standing at the podium. It took him a long time, it seemed, to realize that I was there. Finally, he turned to me and said, "My, won't do to get all wet like that. Take care of yourself." "The girl, she at your place again?" Annalie said this with his usual dry composure. But I had no time or patience for his platitudes. "Just what is she? Answer me." His face hardened as he fell silent. I continued to glare at him, wasn't playing any of his games today. She tried to erase my memory just now. I don't think it was intentional. At least not on her part. So tell me, just what are you scheming? Oh, pray tell, what did she do? She sang a song, that's what. I see. A song. Annalie nodded. He seemed so satisfied. But I wasn't about to let him get away with it, so I asked. She's a mnemonicide, isn't she? A freaking Omega. Just like you. He stopped smiling that instant. For a while, he did nothing. But in the end, he nodded curtly. Correct. That's why I'm raising her. To what end? What the hell is an Omega, anyway? Impressive. Most impressive. It only took you, what, 3 years to ask that question? I've been waiting. But you already know now, don't you? I continued to glare at him, but Annalie just brushed it off. His smile twisted a bit. Obviously, he was enjoying himself. You've seen it with your own eyes, haven't you? You've been past the gate. I know you have. Right. I'd slipped past the gate on 8th Street, the so-called Gate of Farewell. Every cured patient left this city through that gate, or in a body bag. And honestly, I hadn't much interest in Omegas until I'd first met Annalie 3 years before. I'd known from the beginning that he was a genius, and not above using underhanded methods to get what he wanted. I'd also known from the beginning that he was using me, but I didn't know why, so obviously I'd been investigating on my own. So one night I waited for the changing of the guard at midnight and used that opportunity to slip out of the gate. I knew that if I was found out, I'd be expelled from the town, but I didn't care. Okay, my goodness. So, I hate the cliffhanger there, but what I'm assuming is going to happen is he's going to... we're nearly an hour into this one, and I'm assuming what's going to happen is he's going to go into heading on out past, go into the scenario where he went out past the gate there. So, and then come back to this scene and continue talking to Annalie. So we've probably got a good stopping point here, just because even though I want to go on, that's definitely a pretty intense moment. But it doesn't seem like it's going to be letting up anytime soon, and I don't want to have like a 3-hour episode here for multiple reasons. One, because no one would just keep watching for 3 hours. No one's probably going to watch it for this long, but and my voice isn't going to last any longer. But gee whiz, my goodness, I have no idea what the heck is going on here. So she's trying to wipe out his memory. We have a reference to so now right before she tries to mnemonicide him, wipe his memory out, he mentioned Law, right? So was she gonna wipe out Law, or was she just gonna wipe out Maria? What was she gonna wipe out? I don't know. And now also this brings into question, did this happen in the past, or is this happening, like, when did this happen? I'm still thinking that this is historic. Because if it isn't historic, then yeah, Law's just gone, because so much time has passed in this particular arc. And the head in Law's lap that happened in last episode, that must have just been a hallucination or something. But so much time has happened in this particular, or passed in this particular story arc, that Law would be gone for, a period of at least many months, with no sight nor sound nor mention of her. So, this still has to be something that has happened in the past. So, the mention of... I just found it kind of interesting why when he said Law, and she's like, why Law? You're like, well, I found that kind of interesting because if it wasn't in the past, you would kind of think that would be something that the Mnemonicide would kind of be trying to draw out. To draw out as they would be trying to draw out pain or draw out dolor. Like, why would you mention Law as something that you would want to include in this song, or include in part of this Mnemonicide protocol, as part of something to be eliminated on a subconscious level? Because obviously he doesn't know he's being mnemonicided, so to speak. But the fact that they kind of reiterated, why Law, made me, pause there and take a, think about that for a second. But he wouldn't have met her yet, if this is in the past, so that doesn't really make any sense. So, yeah, so unless this is not in the past, if this is the current event, then that makes a lot more sense. But if it's not, if this is if this is just a really, really, really long flashback, then that's just, I don't know, then that's just kind of strange. But I'm not sure. But I guess if it's a flashback, if he is flashing back, then it would also make sense for him to have thoughts from his current consciousness in the flashback too. So I guess that would make sense. I guess he could kind of inject current conscious thoughts into his past flashbacks. I don't know if that makes any sense. Probably doesn't. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I really don't know. This is just craziness. This is just a bunch of bonkers is what's going on right here. We do have a little bit more information about Maria here. We don't know whether or not Dexter's interaction with her was legitimate, and Dexter apparently, when he mnemonicided her, got rid of Blackiris, which is interesting, because I guess now that I think about it, if Blackiris was planning on mnemoniciding Maria, and he knew her from before, then that wouldn't necessarily purge the memory of Blackiris from Maria, right? She would just forget about the time that she was being mnemonicided. I don't know if that's the appropriate terminology, but she would just forget the time that she was having the mnemonicide protocol enacted on her, but she would still remember him from before, because evidently they had a strong connection from before that time, because that's why he wanted to get that training. But for one reason or another, Dexter either thought it was necessary or was being vindictive and decided to purge Blackiris completely from Maria's memory. And Blackiris didn't like that choice. So yeah, that's crazy. And you know, and then of course, the girl here is a very powerful mnemonicide. So we got that going on too. So a lot of stuff going on here. And frankly, one of my biggest questions right now is this something that has happened? In which case, all we have, the biggest question, I guess, is if it has happened, then it's just information, right? It's just something that can kind of give us more information about the characters that we already know, right? It can give us more information about the characters and the scenes that we've already known and experienced, right? Because if it's in the past, then obviously the events that we've already seen are already set in stone and they can't change, right? But what I don't what is becoming muddy for me, what is becoming slightly muddy for me, or more than slightly muddy, is whether or not this actually is in the past. And if it's not in the past, then the ramifications of what are happening become very much more real. They become very much more real, and they're not just information at that point. Then they actually are going to shape the future, so to speak. So, man, honestly, at the end of this one, I'm a little bit more confused than anything, to tell you the truth. I'm more confused than anything. So, all that being said, I think that is where we are going to. That's where we're gonna finish up here. So if you liked this video, then remember to drop it a like. And if you liked it a lot and you want to see the rest of this series and you are not currently subscribed to this channel, then remember to subscribe as well if you are so inclined. But regardless, as always, thanks so much for watching. And we're going to be picking up right here next time.